What if I told you that racism and many other forms of prejudice don't just exist in society, they exist in the brain? Neuroscience has shown that the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for detecting threat and triggering fear, becomes active when people encounter someone they've been conditioned to see as different or other. In a groundbreaking study, researchers used MRI scans to show that white participants who viewed images of black faces, they had stronger amygdala activation. And those same participants, they scored higher on the implicit association test, which measures unconscious bias. This other researchers, they went deeper. They found that darker skin tones were more likely to trigger the amygdala response, suggesting that these reactions are shaped by cultural stereotypes and not only actual danger. This other research showed that Caucasian participants, they exhibited stronger amygdala activation to black versus white faces, and this activation was correlated with racial bias. Another study found that even in Japanese participants, amygdala activity could predict bias towards South Korean, showing that this neurological pattern isn't limited to one culture. The bottom line is prejudice is not just a social issue, it's a neural pattern shaped by experience, media, culture, and education. Now, I want to quickly touch on a crucial concept called intersectionality. This was approached as well by Patricia Collins and Surma Bild in the book Intersectionality. At its core, intersectionality helps us understand that our different identities like race, gender, and sexual orientation don't exist in isolation. They overlap and interact to shape our unique experiences. This is why we can have complex situations where a person experiences prejudice from one angle, but might hold prejudice themselves from another angle. Like, for example, a person can be gay and experience homophobia, but still hold racist views. Or a person can be black and experience racism, but be homophobic or transphobic. Intersectional analysis shows us that an individual isn't just a victim or a perpetrator. We all navigate a complex web of privilege and oppression. This concept is so important because it moves beyond a simple us versus them mentality and helps us see the full complicated picture of social inequality and the different types of prejudice we all carry. Possible solutions for these issues. Education and empathy, they can rewire responses. Let me show you possible solutions for these issues, both in schools and in our lives. And I'm passionate about education, so let's begin there. In schools, number one, perspective taking and empathy training. Teach students to step into someone else's shoes. Like examples include writing exercises, imagining a day in the life of a marginalized person, or reflecting on experiences of discrimination or exclusion. And it's very important that students share their experiences so other students understand what happens to their friends, because sometimes we aren't aware of the difficult realities someone close to us is living. And this is a very powerful empathy exercise, to put yourself in someone else's shoes. This reduces implicit bias by building emotional understanding. Number two, intergroup contact. This principle is grounded in Alpert's contact hypothesis, a foundational theory in social psychology which says that contact between two conflicting groups can reduce prejudice and promote tolerance. But not just any interaction, it must be meaningful and goal-oriented and not superficial. Like when students, they work, learn, and connect with people different from themselves, then their brain starts to reclassify them as us. So if there's a group assignment, instead of letting students self-select into familiar groups, teachers, they can deliberately mix backgrounds like race, gender identity, language, and social class, and assign collaborative tasks where success depends on each member's input. Like the groups must work together on a problem or task that requires their combined efforts to achieve the goal. This is often called a superordinate goal, something that can only be accomplished through cooperation. And then make sure that every person is essential to complete the task. And then also emphasize interdependence and not competition. This is a key point from Alpert's theory because our society encourages too much competition. But when we teach interdependence, we send kids the message that collective work is just as valuable as individual achievement. And this builds empathy, trust, and cooperation. For example, in a science class, students are assigned roles like the designer, researcher, presenter, builder to develop a sustainable city model. And each role is essential. No single student can complete the project alone. Or when students create a play, for example, it's important that they understand that the people controlling the light and the audio, they are just as important as the main actor, director, or producer. Number 3, story-based discussions that humanize outgroups. Books and media, they help students connect emotionally with characters who are different from them. Assign novels, films, or short videos that feature LGBTQIA+, immigrant, disabled, or racially marginalized characters. This is really helpful to create empathy. And then afterward, lead guided discussions on the characters' experiences, struggles, and identity. Encourage reflection by asking, how would you feel if you were in their shoes? And then you can also ask students to write and speak their answers out loud because writing and repetition, they help rewire the brain. And if a student holds limiting beliefs or subconscious prejudice, this process can help bring those thoughts to the surface. For example, after reading George by Alex Gino, a book about a transgender girl, students journal privately about gender and identity, and then they share reflections in pairs. And this helps students develop empathy and understanding for a reality that may not be their own. And if there's a transgender student in the class, they will feel seen and included. It's a win-win. The brain effect. These repeated positive interactions, they reduce the amygdala's threat response, and at the same time, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for empathy and rational thinking, becomes more active. And then over time, students, they stop seeing difference as danger and start seeing people as individuals and not stereotypes. These could be some ways of how we can prevent the kinds of prejudice that we see in the world today, in our lives. Now, in our personal lives, here's my honest suggestion. Yes, it's very important to point out prejudice when we see it. People need to be held accountable, of course. But the most powerful work is the inner work. Like when you're alone, meditating, or in therapy, ask yourself vulnerable questions like, have I ever been racist? Have I ever been homophobic? Have I ever been xenophobic, transphobic? Ask yourself these questions with humility and honesty, and then begin to work on what you find. This is the powerful inner work, self-awareness, because the only person you can change is you. I have done this work myself, and through it, I realized that I've been prejudiced in the past and so many times. I have been racist, I have been homophobic, I have been transphobic, and I'm still working on it because the work never ends. But if each of us commits to this kind of reflection, then we won't just demand change. We will be the change. So I'm leaving the links to the research I mentioned in the description below in case you want to read more. I wish you lots of love.